Miss Cortina, what a delight. I'm sure Souza is smiling somewhere up there in the clouds. I want to go back to what Shelley Souza wrote when she wrote a catalogue for Christie's. And in that she said, "My mother picked up a second job in the evening as a lady's maid in the Connaught Hotel to pay for my father's paints, cigarettes, and beer. Her job at the Connaught was to press cocktail and evening dresses belonging to the hotel guests and to make alterations." Shelley Souza's narrative of life as a child brought alive the fact that there are so many ifs and buts in our family. And this is what he brought alive today. I think the beauty of looking at Souza is that over the years, he did not believe that the priests of the Catholic Church were honest to their profession. I used to teach at a Catholic school. I taught 35 years as an English teacher. And I was very much a part of Mass on Fridays because I'm a trained gospel singer. I was picked up at the age of 5 by a British pianist. My first meeting with Souza at the Kumar Gallery, 1993, I'm looking at his landscapes and I'm humming a hymn that I taught my schoolboys in the morning. For 35 years, I conducted morning assembly and sang hymns with my students. It's beautiful to listen to lusty boys sing. Hey, it's bringing Kabir Das alive. Guru Gobind dao khare kake lagu pai, Balihari Guru aapne Gobind diyo milai. And I'm standing and singing a hymn as I'm looking at the steeples in his landscapes. Will you come and give me that landscape? And I did not know that Souza and Virendra Kumar had walked in. This is a work that belongs to 1956. She spoke about Paris. This is his Paris landscape. And so, I suddenly heard a quiet voice behind me after I was finished singing a verse of my hymn. "Umanaya, you're a trained singer." And I look behind and I see this short little man. And then I tell him, "Yes, sir. I was trained at the age of 5 by a Britisher." And he said, "Then we have to talk." So I told him, "Catholicism lives in you. Every landscape of yours has a church, steeple, the cross. You carry the cross in your mind. And you keep denying it." And so, from that year onwards, every time he came, I used to sing in Delhi's oldest choir. It was called the Delhi Christian Chorus. I was the soloist. Every time he was here in December, he would come for our Christmas concert. All suited and booted with his red tie and a red handkerchief. So cute he looked. But the last time we saw him, he rang me up from Kumar Gallery and said, "I'm here on Christmas night. Will you make me a nice Kerala chicken? Roast, olden style?" I said, "Yes, I will." "How do you know that?" I said, "Because my mom was a great cook and I've inherited what she did." So he came that night for dinner. My guests were Ram Rahman, Pablo Bartholomew, Ronnie Shray, all my classmates from modern school, and Souza and Virendra Kumar. After dinner, just before he left, he looked at me and said, "Do you remember that song by John Rutter?" And I said, "Christmas Carol?" He said, "Yes." And he said, "Will you promise me one thing? If you hear news of my death and there's a memorial service, will you sing my favorite hymns?" And I told him, "I will. Because I would always want to know and understand that finally you would go back to the person you denied." I want to say thank you to both of you. And to Miss Coutinho, I hope one day you write a book. May it be better than mine. May it be better than what Meera and I have done in our years together. Because we only wish that youngsters would be better than us. And today, in his memory, I remember a very nice incident that he told me about Ibrahim El-Qazi taking his works on a wheelbarrow in Mumbai for his exhibition. Ibrahim El-Qazi was his first friend in the art world. Ibrahim El-Qazi has the largest number of Souza works in his collection, and the crucifixes that he has done are outstanding. His next friend in his later years was Virendra Kumar. Virendra also has some wonderful collections. This is part of the Kumar collection. And today, I want to remember him. I want to remember Akbar Padamsee sir. He went to Paris and he spent time with Raza sir and Padamsee sir. And then India celebrates 100 years of Ibrahim El-Qazi this year. And so, we are also thinking of Virendra Kumar. All of them are there. And I want to sing to you one of his favorite hymns, just a verse. I want you to carry it as your memory. Because for us, there is only one Souza. Can we close our eyes? And Jesus said, "Come to the water, stand by my side. I know you are thirsty, you won't be denied. I felt every teardrop when in darkness you cried. And I'm here to remind you that for those tears I died." Thank you. Golgotha in Goa. Thank you, sir.
Hi, thank you. Just one. So, thank you so much, Wendy. I really found it intriguing how we must consider modernism more relationally also as well as in a linear way. And I like your paper.
I'm sorry. I just want him to put the mic on.
Yeah, so I really like your paper. And
Thank you so much.
I also want to talk about Utsa's paper. And Utsa, I was like, I really like your paper. I thought that it is considering, it's moving from the idea that culture and by extension art is not separate from material life, that is also produced. It's talking about absence and presence. It's talking about the memory, the flavor of food and how Souza was moved by that experience and that anubhav of food. It's focusing on marginalized classes, and whether advertently or inadvertently, That is what cultural materialism is all about. How we look at the silences and the absences and we try to take them out. That's what has been done about Mane. In Mane's Olympia, the black servant girl who's carrying flowers. So I thought that your paper got everything together. It was contextual, it was almost a local color of Goa, Goanese culture. It talked about paddy fields, it talked about mango plantations, it talked about Souza trying to reproduce all those, it talked about his memory, and it also talked about the absence. So yeah, thank you, I was like really impressed with your paper.
You have provoked no questions.
That's okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I think we have finished this session a bit earlier than expected, which is like completely unbelievable in a conference format. But yes, I think thanks to Ashok Vajpayee ji and very, very perfect planning, we have actually finished a bit early and we are waiting for a very interesting next session. So we have to wait about 15 minutes. And I think it's a great chance to have a conversation. So if anyone wants to share any thoughts about the 7 masters, their views, you want to share an observation, the floor is open for any one of you to please come up and share their observations. Yes, please. And please come. And one more thing, 2 to 3 minutes, please, so that we have, so that we can get all the people in.
One thing which is very clear of all the 7 masters, there is nothing common between them. It's quite unlike of the other professions that I know of. You want to be original, but you tend to copy your friends or things which you like among your contemporaries. Oh, he has drawn the human figure so well, he has drawn the trees very well, his landscape is very nice. Even though you don't want to be original, you tend to copy. But in this case, I find all 7 of them being contemporaries, so close to each other, so fond of each other, and yet starkly different. I have not been able to understand that, so if somebody can enlighten me. How each of their styles were totally different from, there was not a trace of commonality between them as a painter, as a painting style, I would say.
Point has been made earlier. Well, when we think of friends and some kind of a camaraderie built between friends, we conventionally think that they must be sharing either styles or aesthetics or visions or ideas or whatever. Now here is a unique case where what they very generally shared was they have to create an art which is modern, which is rooted in India, which is not revivalist and which is not Western imitation or whatever influence. This was the common concern which they shared. Each one took a different path. And as the previous session, the young lady showed how Souza and Raza were completely different from each other, and yet they share certain concerns. So I think we have to look for that, not think of, and this reminds me of what happened in the literature. In 1943, an anthology came out, and I am reminded of it because it was called Saptak. In fact, the word Saptak I have taken from there. It was Saptak. It was edited by a gay, Shruti Hiranvasan. It had 7 poets. And if you look at those poets and the path most of them took later, they all became individuals in different ways. And in the editorial itself, Gay wrote that they were seekers of paths. They have not arrived, they have not yet, they are experimenting, and they are seekers. Rahon ke anveshi was the term used. So these were 7 different people. Gay himself by that time has become a major figure. He had already published Shekharik Jeevani and some other collections. The other 6 had not published a collection at all. And one of them was Gajanan Madhava Muktibodh, who became soon after a major figure, and such a major figure that in Hindi criticism, Gay and Muktibodh thought to be 2 poles pitched against each other. That they were not is another matter. But so here are other examples from literature, for instance, where the similar things have happened. And it is interesting, this is happening in 40s. This is published in 43. IPTA has been formed, Progressive Writers Union has come up, and Progressive Artists Group has come up. Now the Progressive Artists Group name seemed to have been taken by Souza from the Progressive Writers Union. But Progressive Writers Union had a distinct Marxist commitment. I mean, they thought Marxism is the new way out. But Progressive Artists Group had nothing to do with Marxism. It was only Souza who was a Marxist of a certain kind at that time. Even that he later, Souza must be a figure who kept on giving up and assuming new roles. At one time there was a white flag movement. There was some kind of a strange movement in United States, and Souza felt very attracted towards it, and he wrote poems. And these poems, he gave me a collection of those poems, which he published himself. But let us also not forget that Souza, I first saw Souza's drawings in Encounter, a journal which in 60s was the most prestigious journal in English. It was being edited by Stephen Spender. It's a matter of later discovery that it was being funded by CIA. But at that time, this was not known at all. And some of the best writings appeared there. I read the French poet Yves Bonnefoy's first article there. I read an article about the contemporary German poetry. German poets were writing very short poems, 4 lines, 5 lines, 10 lines, and about daily objects, about a window, about a chair. And why was this being done? That article explained that the German language has been so polluted, so poisoned by the Nazis, that it has lost all its human strength and warmth. So to revive the inherent humanity of the language, these poets are writing these short descriptive poems. I was telling you all this because Gayatri Sinha was on her way. Happily she has arrived, so we can have the next session. Please come.
Thank you.
Who's covered dinner? Please. You do the rest. Okay.
Welcome. So I'll just introduce the paper presenters.
Yeah, this is great.
It's been a long day, and we've been all here since 10:30, and I'm surprised to see so many of us still here. Hang on, this is the last session, and this is on Krishen Khanna. I welcome Gayatri Sinha ji as the chair of this session, and I call upon paper presenters Niyati Rometra and Saraswati K. Bhattati.
One speaker, one is not.
Where is she?
Yeah, she's not.
Should we lift you up? Hey. One of them has failed to appear. There is only one. So you have 1 to 1.
How do we introduce her? We need some information. Thank you. Thank you very much.
The abstracts.
No, just to introduce her.
Yeah, that too. Say something about Khanna.
Yeah.
But then ask.
Do we speak from the... Okay. Can you tell me how to introduce you?
Yes, explain.
No, there's no bio. Yeah, my name is Saraswati. I come from Bangalore and I'm an art historian and an outliner.
Okay, that's enough.
नहीं फॉर्मल करो घरेलू हो जाता है.
Thank you all. It's lovely to see this very august audience. This will be no doubt a compliment to Krishen Khanna. He's an artist whose reputation has only increased with the passage of time. It would be fair to say that he would have been fairly neglected in terms of criticism in the 70s and the 80s. But Krishen Khanna became, I think, somewhat unrecognized for the kind of political charge, social investment, and the understanding of what the subaltern sensibility in India would mean. If we look at the work that he did in the 1950s, there is thick, heavy impasto, and somewhat difficult to read subjects. I think it's when he goes on this scholarship in 1963-64 to the United States, and he discovers en route in Japan the Sumi, and he sets out to make these works. Now in the NGMA in Bombay, in his big retrospective at the moment, there is a very large Sumi. It's almost as big as this wall. And to think that he was making it in the bathtub of his hotel in New York, putting the paper into the bathtub and then through the pipes putting the color onto it, it shows the willingness to enter into cultures and modes of art forms which were not intrinsic, which were not necessarily going to transplant into the kind of milieu that he was coming from, but he did it with a great deal of passion. I think this did two things. One, it made him very aware of monochrome. And when we look at the work, Krishen Khanna is a vibrant colorist. Bandwalas and everybody that he was painting are in extremely rich chroma. But the Sumi points to another direction. And then we realize that there are a very large number of works which are in black and white. And they are invested with the condition of doubt, with an existential question. Can we then think of Krishen Khanna as one of a troika of Indian modernists who deal with the human body and reflect on the conditions that were so prevalent in a changing India? We talk of present day India changing. India has changed since independence in several kinds of ways, and certainly it turned in the late 60s. We see it in cinema, we see this in Ghatak, we see this in Ray, we even see this in Raj Kapoor, whom we may not appreciate as a filmmaker. But we see disappointment with the nation state. And when we come to the 70s, Krishen Khanna has changed. He's an altered painter. The paint is thin. The thick, heavy impasto of abstractions has made way for figures. And I just want to point out to those who are theorizing, I would point it out to young Saraswati here, look at Krishen Khanna's political consciousness and how he brings that to play. We know that Ranajit Guha and all the subaltern writers of 1983, which is when the subaltern movement really picks up and it gets a big address across the global south, so to speak. Krishen Khanna by 1979 was already responding to the politics of the emergency, to the disappointment of a failed nation state, what he might have seen, to the wars, to the aspects of migration and displacement which he himself had witnessed, and to the growing cities, the urbanization of a city like Delhi and the alienation that it had sort of engendered. So if we see him with the works of the Christ cycle, we have actually seen an artist do the same thing, re-embrace a culture that is far removed from his own, but to bring it into the bastis of Nizamuddin, or the streets of Bhogal, or the dhabas of the displaced migrants of Punjab, and then speak about a growing political consciousness. And I think now we've had 50 years to reflect on Krishen Khanna. The work has only grown richer and more complex. So this is not really my speech, but this is just an overflow of appreciation for the artist. I'd like to invite young Saraswati, an art historian and art writer from Bangalore, to make her presentation. Thank you.
Good evening all. My topic is mythologizing the other, Krishen Khanna and the politics of representation. So in my article I am trying to explore Krishen Khanna's 3 series of works. Basically the first one is Mahabharata series, the second one the Christ series, and the third one the Bandwalas. A few examples from all the 3, and trying to read it through a semiotic perspective, taking references from Barth, etc. Mostly it's Barth, and then as we move on, I also refer to Walter Benjamin in a certain context. So the first session where I'm going to speak about Mahabharata and Christ series, it's largely about how he mythologizes the subaltern through these works, and the second part is about how the Bandwalas are sort of Bandwala series is more like you can say demythologizing, or you kind of you don't see them in any particular space. They're so liminal. So I'm going to address that 2 different aspects within Krishen Khanna's works. So I would like to start with 2 lines from this last chapter, Shanti Parva of Mahabharata. So in the aftermath of the war, amid the smoldering silence of Kurukshetra, Bhishma, the patriarch of Puruvamsha, lies impaled on a bed of arrows suspended between life and death. Around him stood Yudhishthira, his 4 brothers, and Draupadi, listening with bowed heads as the dying titan speaks timeless truths of dharma and burdens of righteous rule. So this is a scene that Krishen Khanna have been repeatedly doing in over the centuries. Over the decades, if you see in different color palettes, different compositions, it has inspired him a lot. And what I'm trying to bring is a question like what layers of narrative meaning are evoked in this fragment from Shanti Parva of Mahabharata, particularly when analyzed through Barth's idea of sign system. So here I'm using a small extract from Barth's mythologies. So he calls it, myth is a type of speech. It is not any type. Language needs special conditions in order to become myth. Myth is a system of communication that is a message. This allows one to put that myth cannot possibly be an object, a concept, or an idea. It is a mode of signification, a form. So here in the next slide, I have this last sermon on the battlefield by Krishen Khanna, and using this we're just trying to see through how Barth through Barth's idea of myth. So there are these 2 models by Barth. So the first order sign by Barth. So based on that, if we see this particular work, what we see here is there's an elderly statesman giving moral advice on governance and dharma to the younger generation. And in the second order sign, which is where you start finding symbolism within this, that's where Bhishma as an embodiment and authority of timeless wisdom, duty and ethical governance you find. So he turns into a symbol rather than just an elderly character, giving ethical advice. So these 2 are based on Barth's idea. And then I go to a 3rd layer, maybe I can say. I try to create a 3rd layer.
Screen only screen
We need the full screen.
Yeah, full screen.
Full
screen एक PDF है. It's not readable.
Not really.
Is it full screen button?
It's
It's a PDF. Is it readable now?
Someone says F11.
Yeah, but the image is stamp sized.
Oh.
Okay, that's fine, no worries. Carry on. Please carry on.
So the third order sign that I'm trying to address is reframing the epic moment through a contemporary humanized lens, inviting critical reflection on power, suffering and moral authority. So here the artist merges myth into present, reframing the epic moment through a contemporary humanized lens and trying to address the moral or ethical issues of the time. And what I also sort of feel is this might also have been contextualized based on Krishen Khanna's personal life and his experiences of partition as well, because of which he's repeating the scene. And here, if you see, in the third frame, actually, they're just common people with, they're just local men with those, local, appearance, hand gestures, and they look very familiar for us than those, if you remember the Amar Chitra Katha kind of, the same scene as there in Amar Chitra Katha, and you see how different Krishen Khanna has represented using people around him or the experiences that he knew. And this is the next one that I wanted to. So this is not a biographical dialogue, or it's not going in chronology. I should mention that. I'm just taking based on the topics. So this is another version of the same subject, and here it's Draupadi's last laugh. So here you see there's a subtle smile on Draupadi's face. It's not a great image though. Yeah. So she hides her face with the pallu, but then she has a sarcastic smile that it's a very interesting introduction by Krishen Khanna into it. So there's an implied gaze of Draupadi, and it brings in this irony that whatever Bhishma is preaching at this particular point, he himself has not practiced in his own life. So I found that very interesting, like how in each frame he tried to bring a subtle change, though he's repeating the same topic. And here I would like to place this humiliation of Draupadi, which actually acts as a flashback to the Kurukshetra war. And it's like this is a reason for, one of the reasons for the war. And here he actually adds his own version. So Draupadi is placed in Duryodhana's lap, which is not in the Mahabharata, but then he kind of uses the people's experiences, the real people's experiences, and probably what he saw around him. And he makes it more confronting for the viewers, and he makes the viewers sort of feel guilty or be part of the whole scene, because in the actual scene in Mahabharata, where Draupadi was dishonored or that, in that scene also you see that people were not speaking up for that, including the seniors and elders in that family. So here I feel he's sort of placing us in that position to feel like we are also not responding to what is happening around us. So in that way, I feel through this mythological layering, Khanna makes the unseen other and historically overlooked subject painfully visible. And by mythologizing the everyday acts of violence, both ancient and tragically continuous, Khanna positions himself as a visual advocate for the subaltern, the historically voiceless other. In this particular image, I also found something interesting, is the dog under the bench. So if in the end of Mahabharata, there's a dog that follows Yudhishthira, and there's a lot of question and answer dialogues of existence and philosophy, etc. So I feel here the dog stands as a kind of a ethical conscience of human being. So he's like right under the bench where these things are happening. So I thought that's a interesting way to look at this image. And at this point, okay, this is where I end the Mahabharata session. So also, it's more like about everyday women's silence. She is in grief, but she's also not able to express it. It's unheard, and it's unbearable in a way where when you can't express what you're going through, it's even more unbearable. And one thing you can see in all the three Mahabharata images that I put there, they're not dramatized. They don't have those typical fancy, costumes and dressing. Like, we only understand it through how the characters are placed. How So I find it interesting. Also at this point, I want to address this that. Generally, when we see images of Mahabharata, we come across Gitopadesha as a very important scene of kind of propagating dharma, or that frame is usually used. And I find it interesting that Krishen Khanna have used this particular scene of Bhishma. Bhishma talking about moral and ethical things about governance, because Bhishma is somebody who has lived through all these issues of governance and duty as a royal person, etc. And he's like this mortal elder person. But when you look into Krishna's advice to Arjuna, it's more philosophical. It's also sometimes metaphysical, and it's like a cosmic knowledge, but not coming from the earthly space. So that choice of subject really, I found it very interesting. And so myth for Krishen Khanna is not simply a narrative, but he's trying to make a critical framework through the myth. And coming to the biblical series, and here I've taken a quote from Gayatri Ma'am's book. So the Christ series were set here in Delhi, Nizamuddin, in fact, and appear as current happenings. He is wandering amongst us or sleeping with us, followers on the road islands. They are not religious pictures as such. I painted Jesus not in the image given by European painters, but as one of the fakirs once around Nizamuddin. So this is Krishen Khanna himself have spoke about this. So here we see this Last Supper image where, again, unusual scene. We are used to the Da Vinci Last Supper, the linear arrangement here. Then we have something very different, very local and very dark without any background again. And they are all common people. It also reminds me of artists like Chitta Prasad and Somnath, or if you remember the Rite Bhaga, many of the prints, how the localites gathered together to speak about their issues. So, and in some way you can also pinpoint the disciples of Jesus too, like if you look at it very carefully. So I feel he's trying to use Last Supper as a site of resistance where the poor proletarians and the displaced gather to voice their struggle. So compared to Mahabharata, where I think it's more like the Mahabharata series more universal in its essence, but when it comes to the Christ series, it's more personal. Like it's about people right around him in the dhabas, or maybe he might have even met and spoke to these people. So there's more personal connection. And here I've used two other works also. This is Betrayal and Flagellation. So again, when we come to betrayal, it's more like a universal condition of one person kind of giving suffering to another person. So it's not sticking just to the story of Christ, but it's more broader sense. And a broader idea of violence and betrayal. Like it happens in our day-to-day life. And then the next image is flagellation. So here in both the images and even the other rest of the Christ images, you can see how Krishen Khanna shifts from classical Christian iconography and reducing the scene to essential elements like gestures, spatial tensions, and deliberately skips the iconographic figure of Christ, how we typically identify him. So I call it as an iconic strategy. He's removing the iconic specifications of Christ. And so here the mythical structure is not invoked to convey divine martyrdom, nor to elevate the figures, but rather to emphasize on vulnerability, socio-political oppression and subaltern and the everyday human condition. The next one is Emmaus. I don't know if it's readable. So this is an earlier version. Emmaus, most of the time if you see, whether it's Caravaggio or any of those classical artists, you see it in a very horizontal frame, and Christ reveals himself, and these two disciples or followers, they're just so shocked that, this is Christ, and unexpected, revealing of Christ. And here he uses all the localites, the dhaba scene, a particular scene, and the way he has rendered is also very interesting, because I feel the person in the center with the blue scarf probably have revealed himself, that just like how Christ was done, and the two characters in front, like the first front layer, you see they're like already shocked, and the people behind that, the earthy shades, they are just behind, without any face. They're very anonymous, and this also reminds me of the emergency time, because people couldn't gather, they couldn't discuss anything openly, so they had to have these secret places. They kind of cover their faces, and they had to have meetings and all these things. So somewhere it looks connected with probably Krishen Khanna's experience of emergency and how people secretly meet in these local dhabas, etc. So, and I also like the way how the figures are sort of disappearing. It's not like finished, the figures back. And in this version of Emmaus, the figures are more defined, solid, and focused on the act of eating, yet the central figure appeared to be withdrawn, anxious, gazing into the void with uncertainty. So here again I was trying to connect with because he looks he's too anxious, the central character. It's like something is going to happen. So again, connecting to the emergency period, it's like you don't know when you're going to get arrested. You don't know what, for what you're going to get arrested. So I was just trying to connect the period and that Krishen Khanna is trying to reflect on. So, so here I've mentioned that the third order myth believes a vehicle not for transcendence, but for meditating on human condition and existential violence in contemporary times. So we can also connect his works to present political scenario, and while placing the common man in the story of a divinity, it not only elevates them to narrative significance, but function as a retelling of Christ's own trajectory from an ordinary individual to the Messiah, suggesting that potential social transformation resides within everyday lives of marginalized communities. The myth then is about quiet resistance and resilience. So these, the life of common man also in these images, if you see, it can also connect with Christ's own journey, that he was also a common man and then how he transformed. I also found these connections that we can bring visually to Khanna's work. That is, like I was mentioning, Chitta Prasad's composition, Somnatho's composition, and okay. F.N. Souza's, you can see differences between F.N. Souza and Krishen Khanna's compositions of the same subject. You also see in Renaissance time, you have Fra Lippo Lippi. It's not a composition comparison that I'm bringing, but Fra Lippo Lippi is to take the street children to, model for Christ and angels and all this. So I feel Krishen Khanna is doing the same thing when it comes to his Christ series, taking the local people. Now the third part is about bandwalas who who is by and large in a liminal system. So they're musicians but not accepted in the music world. They're performers but not accepted in the performance world. They are called for marriages, funerals, some nationalistic events, but then they're never recognized. They don't have a position. They don't belong anywhere. And so unlike other figures that are easily absorbed into dominant cultural narratives, the bandwala doesn't belong to any one defined culture, which makes it difficult to strip them of context, primarily because they haven't been absorbed into the cultural sign system itself, as they remain grounded in reality. So if you have to have a cultural sign, you should have a pattern, you should belong to somewhere and make meaning. So, so they become in a liminal space. So, So it's trying to compare his close-up images of bandwalas here. So I sort of took Chaplin's, this is a very popular quote attributed to Charlie Chaplin, where he says, "Life is a tragedy in close-up and comedy in long shot." So when I was actually looking through Krishen Khanna's close-up images of bandwalas, they're very melancholic, and they're sort of lost in something. They're not jovial, but if you actually look at the composition with more figures where they're playing band, and you see them in a group and they look so excited, so happy, and they're smiling extra. But these close-up ones are like too serious, too melancholic, lost in some other world, and very existential like. And if you actually see the texture, how he has painted it, the flute or any of those instruments and the human figures, they all look, the feel is almost similar, the texture is almost similar, turning them into like objects. So they exist on margins. Musicians who are not part of, I mentioned this already. So they're liminal and between different worlds, and I also, in my article, actually refer this as a byproduct of colonial complex legacy, and so I'm not going deep into it, that's fine. So they're dislocated from historical and cultural continuity, become fragments in the debris of post-colonial city. And as Gayatri Sinha appropriately puts it, they become people with an intermediate part and unmapped future. So Khanna's engagement with myth here marks a critical shift. His refusal to elevate bandwalas into a mythic archetype does not denote an absence of myth, but rather enacts a conscious subversion of it, revealing how certain lives remain trapped in invisibility and without recognition. And So for me, Krishen Khanna is more like a nomadic storyteller kind of a person. So, and one more thing I found interesting is, if you see Mahabharata and Tri-series, the pain is depicted as pain, but when it comes to bandwalas, the pain is made into dark humor. It's like there's a sense of humor there. I also like to use this Walter Benjamin's idea of the angel of history. So I think we can kind of place Krishen Khanna in that, like visually, because Walter Benjamin says that the angel of history is always about looking into the progress. You're just moving forward and forward and forward. But I think when you look at history, should be kind of contemplated on. You should stand at a particular point and then just contemplate on what happened, then just going on focusing on progress. So I feel Krishen Khanna, through his visual practice, does something very similar, because he asks us to stand there and contemplate on what is happening in these lives.
You should finish now.
Yes. So Khanna's figures are not heroes in the traditional sense, but carriers of unresolved histories marked by dignity, fatigue, irony, and silence. So I'll just conclude it with two questions. So that's how my essay finishes. So I conclude my essay by offering a few questions for further reflections. Today's societies are aware of construction of narratives, and even the ordinary individual's cultural and personal moments are defined by spectacle and hyper-visibility, where identity turns into algorithms. Do Khanna's figures, who are always on the margins, hold up a mirror to our own placelessness? The second one is, or do they stand as stark reminders of nations' unresolved and uncomfortable past, where myth, violence and displacement continue to cast long shadows over the present, ultimately exposing how little human nature has evolved despite generations of epic narratives and inherited moral frameworks. Thank you.
Yes, sure. Can we have mics, please? We need mics. Any comments or responses to Saraswati's paper? Any comments here? Or you've all had a very long day? Tired. मैं एक सवाल पूछ लेती हूँ, but this would be rather in the context of all the other artists of his ilk who have been discussed today. To take your last question, and to see whether we are observers, and how does the artist use myth as a category in a certain sense. So on me. So if we have to take, say, Husain, Tyeb and Krishen and see it as a kind of a triangulation of artists who deal with the human figure. They are all close contemporaries, they are all figures who deal with the same history. Now Husain inveigles us into his, the beauty of his paintings through seduction, through persuasion to a certain extent. Tyeb through the fact that there is no redemption. The existential fall. There's a lovely show going on in Bombay at the moment, and we never see so many, we never see 20 or 30 Tyeb Mehtas, but we could. But ये जो गिरावट है वो figure की, वो it is Lucifer's falling from heaven, it is man falling into the depths, it is the mythic figures falling into Patal. They are all essentially Tyeb Mehta. There is no redemption. And then there is Krishen Khanna, which is the great epic figures which he refers to, the Christ and the Mahabharata, and then the small people, the people of the road, the lumpens, etc. How do you see their calibration? I mean, I'm particularly interested in asking you, how do you see their use of myth?
Are you speaking about the Bandwalas or the Mahabharata?
No, mainly the Mahabharata and the Christ figures as epic figures.
Okay, from my reading and my understanding of his visuals of Mahabharata, like generally, because I picked only 3 of them, I think the Bhishma character there becomes, it's kind of the nation's, it's a sort of nation's agony, also trying to, it's like we need to correct ourselves compared to the past today. So every time there is a Bhishma coming and trying to say that, okay, this is not how it should be, next time we need to sort of make it better. So I think that sort of, it's the way I think Krishen Khanna narrates it in visually, how he puts it, how he plays the characters, and like I told, the common man coming into it, and again Bhishma is like again an elderly character, it could be anyone, maybe it's like a symbolism of the nation itself, or great personalities of nations trying to, it's also like a consciousness about the ethics. So I thought to sort of compare it that way. So using myth in that sense.
Okay, let me complicate this a little bit more. Bhishma, is he a great character is the question, because for 58 days he's lying on a bed of arrows, and there is a great moral ambiguity in his role. He was there when Draupadi was being molested. He and Vidur were both there. Then there was also the question of, I think one of the salient features of the Mahabharata is the rejection of women. Draupadi is rejected. She is molested not only by Dushasana, but also by Kichak, also by Jayadratha. Jayadratha is the brother-in-law and he molests her. So there are at least there are 3 or 4 episodes of that. Then there is also Bhishma's rejection of Amba, Ambalika and Ambika. Now, what moral authority then does he have, particularly when it comes to the subject of women? And I'm asking as a contemporary person, ये तो आज का सवाल है, शायद उस समय का सवाल नहीं था.
I think in the next image that Draupadi's last laugh, I think I've placed it over there because of the same reason, because Bhishma advises, but then Draupadi have those satirical smile or kind of sarcastic smile, sorry, bringing that irony that you are telling all this now, but we didn't say it when things were happening. So I think that Krishen Khanna has rightly placed it in that particular frame. He's bringing that women were ignored and all these things are happening, unjust happenings were there, and it's again questioning the right of Bhishma's, like how can you speak about ethics, because this is what you yourself have done. You didn't speak a word when unethical things happen. So I think it's relevant to today's times also. So I followed the Draupadi on Duryodhana's lap image because of that. Because we are all, I think, into the same loop again and again in today's political situations. We have people giving great speeches about what is right and wrong and women and safety, but then it sort of repeats again and again. So I feel we can place ourselves in most of Krishen Khanna's frames because it's still going on. So I felt that was very relevant to the time. I'm not sure if I really answered your question.
Now your last comments. Your comments.
No, this is one of the observations about the bandwalas is, just to bring in your last section also, is they have no facial features.
Yes.
They are almost completely effaced. Now, does that make them sculpturesque? Does that make them de-individuated? And does that make them almost silent? They haven't got a voice. They have sound, but they don't have a voice. So how does one integrate them in his larger picture of the subaltern? What is Krishen's comment on the subaltern? If they are the dhabas, dhabawalas, they are the truckwalas, and finally there is the defaced, so to speak, bandwala.
Bandwala's case, in my article I mentioned a few of these things, that how they're anonymous, how they're rigid figures. Though I didn't mention they're like sculptures, like how you're mentioning. Sorry, I just lost track of the question.
What is his position with regard to the subaltern? People speak of him as a narrator. You also mentioned that he was looking on. How is he looking then at the subaltern?
I think he's very empathetic about the characters that he paints, whether it's Mahabharata, Christ, or bandwalas. I feel he's taking it as very personal, and he take it into his into himself. Like it's more introspective, like where we are going as a society, what is happening. And it's not like he's just painting what he saw around him, but he's also trying to put himself in their shoes, is what I feel. Because there's a lot of empathy in the Bandwala series, I feel, because it's more personal. Like Mahabharata series is taking more universal kind of a perspective, I felt, like standing away and speaking about it slightly. And when it comes to Christ, he sort of put the people he knew around him in the shops or people he might have spoken. But when it comes to Bandwalas, he feel probably the same liminal state where he was in once because of the partition, and he came there. He also sort of studied at different places like Lahore, England and coming back. So I felt that he's also in a very similar liminal position, just like Bandwalas, not very evidently though, in that sense. Maybe that's how I look at it.
Okay, maybe we should continue. But finally, why Krishen Khanna? Why would this be a subject of serious study for you as a contemporary artist?
Well, I have some of my earlier articles and writings based on subaltern and how different artists look at it. So I found within the choices given in the poster, I found more related to Krishen Khanna's work because I could connect this we have Sudhir Patwardhani, Bhupen Kaka. Many of these people have addressed very closer ideas of city, migrants and labours and all, but I felt Krishen Khanna has some different perspective because they speak about city labourers and all in a very different urban perspective, in today's urban perspective. But I think Krishen Khanna has it in a, like I told, very empathetic way, like what happens if we were in their shoes. That's what I actually felt.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, Raza Foundation for having us.
When all the participants may come for a photograph, others may keep on sitting, watching, smiling. Those who have good participants may come, please. And mentors, all the ones who have decided they are still here and they haven't disappeared.
And those who are going to preside tomorrow.
And those who are going to preside tomorrow, is there someone? Yeah.
I thought time.
And after that, you are all invited for dinner.
And one more thing.
But you are not going to get it until we have finished the photograph. And since you would have already eaten at dinner, you are obliged to come tomorrow. And all the participants should be there, and all the other guests who will. Please come for it.
इसको आगे कर देना आप लोग बैठ जाइए ना आप बैठ जाइए हाँ आगे की टेबल ये टेबल उठाएगा क्या कुछ पीछे आ जाए पीछे वाले आइए पीछे उतार लें बस पीछे कुछ खड़े हो जाएंगे ना हाँ ठीक है रेडी ना हम लोग कुछ आगे आ जाए ना कुछ आगे बैठ जाए कुर्सी हटा देंगे बस इधर वो आपके पीछे अब अच्छा है बैठ जाइए यहीं बैठ जाइए थोड़ा सा आगे कोई उतार भी रहा है उतारे तो हम लोग उतरे